think someone has tuned my car, but I don't know. I bought this car for $2,000 a couple of weeks ago, and now I'm using it as a daily driver. The plan is to use it as a fun, low-budget project for the tuning parts in my web shop, and I thought it was more or less standard when I bought it, but it feels a bit too fast for that. So in today's video we're gonna take it to the workshop, and together with Tor at Engdahl Motorsport we're gonna see what kind of tuning parts we can find on it. First up, we need to move one of Tor's customer cars to get some space in the workshop. Apparently this Volvo 240 was painted in the late 90s and it hasn't been driving a meter since then. Now it's finally time for an engine overhaul and a new ECU before startup and tuning. Those of you that are into old school Volvo racing can see that there are some really good parts here. Anyways, back to why I think that my Volvo is slightly tuned. Let's open the hood and see what we can find. The first modification we find here is also the easiest one to spot. This is an aftermarket air filter. I don't think it adds any power, but it's still something many people mount on their Volvos because it changes the sound of the car. As you might have already seen, the Volvo has an 8-valve engine head, and by looking on the side here I can tell that it is a 530 model. This is the smaller one, and the larger one is called a 531. Next modification we found is that the previous owner has raised the wastegate pressure by mounting washers here. This will increase the turbo pressure since the wastegate won't open so easily. Basically, this turns the Volvo from a low pressure turbo model into a full pressure turbo. But how much are these washers really raising the pressure? To know exactly how much it is, we are mounting a turbo gauge into the inlet manifold. As you can see, the inlet manifold has two unused screw holes, so we will use one of them. And since we are already doing that work, we will also mount a sensor for intake air temperature. This is nothing that we will use for now, but it will come in handy later on when we will mount an aftermarket ECU on the car. Knowing both air pressure and air temperature is essential if you want a reliable high-power car. After it's connected, we need to get the hose into the car, and we usually mount it together with all the other cables here. We want to enter into the car behind the glove compartment, so we cut a hole in this rubber here. It might be a bit tricky to reach, so we used both a knife and a wire cutter to get it done. Then we use these hooks to easily move the big lightning into the car. Before we continue with mounting the turbo gauge, we want to check if the control system for the fuel is modified. The box for that is on the passenger side behind these panels. When we removed the box and looked at the backside of it, we see these scratch marks here. And that gives us a clue that a previous owner has opened the box. The adapters on the table here is custom made for connecting a Volvo B330 engine onto a modern ECU. We will make a tutorial on this in the future, but today we are focusing on finding just the tuning parts that is already mounted on the car. When we open the box, we will easily see if it's an original chip or a tuning chip for controlling the fuel. Just as we thought, this is not a standard chip. A previous owner has mounted a Viking ship in it. Okay, back to mounting the turbo gauge. It might be a bit tricky to get the hose through here, but it will usually work with a few tries.
Lite till. Ja, det är bra det här.
We found an old turbo gauge on the shelf that will do fine for now. Time for a test drive to see what the turbo pressure really is.
Ja, han är uppställd i alla fall. Vi bara ladda 05 eller 03.
03 är det va?
Vad fan laddar?
Ja, 09.
Nej, jag tror att det går bra då.
Nej du.
Den spikar lite, hör du det?
Ja.
Jag hör lite klick, klick. För att vara lättryckad så går det helt okej. Vi ska ju upp i... Vi ska dit. Vi ska göra det. Oj, oj. Måste jag ha diff på den? Han är bara för en diff.
Back in the garage, we removed the panel under the steering wheel to check if previous owners also has done something that is another common tuning modification. You see this box up here? The color on it is a mix somewhere between silver and gold, which means that it is a model known as Guld box or Golden box in English. It controls the ignition of the car. Before I show you why people pay extra for these golden boxes, I just want to let you know that the carbon fiber and plastic BMW is up and running again. This time with a max ECU connected to the Volvo engine in it. The almighty 190, however, is a bit further away from startup. Tor can't decide on what engine to use. There is a Volvo T6, there's also a 2GC and a Mercedes V8 in the garage. But we might also end up with something completely different here. Anyways, back to the 940. Just as we did on the box that controlled the fuel, we also saw some marking on the screws on the golden box. This tells us that someone might have opened this box before too. The reason people pay extra for these golden boxes is that on these boxes you can easily change the standard chip to a tuning chip. On the other types of ignition boxes, the chip is usually soldered in place. And just as we expected here, someone has mounted a tuning chip here too. I'm looking forward to put this car in a dyno to see the horsepower on it before we start to tune it properly. I'm also looking forward to show you when we are mounting another ECU in the car together with the adapter harnesses that we are manufacturing. But in the meantime, I think you might enjoy this recommended video. And if you watched this far, I also hope that you have learned something from the video. And if you did, I would appreciate a lot if you give it a thumbs up. I'm also wishing you a good day until next time. Cheers!